All right, everyone, let's get into it. Great to have you here. Happy Tuesday. Love seeing all of you. We got some great topics, but before that, we got a couple announcements. So first off, on Thursday, we have a switch in the agenda. So for those people that are in Europe or UK, this is a friendly time for you. And so Tom Wentworth, the CMO of Recorded Future, is going to be jamming with us on a live session at 12 p.m. Eastern this Thursday, August 5th. Feel free to sign up for that one. A lot of people that were registered for the day event are already registered, so feel free to just show up. A couple other announcements. We got some in-person conference keynotes coming up, and so confirmed for the B2B Sales and Marketing Exchange in Boston. I'll be speaking there on August 10th, specifically about how marketers need to adjust in the dark funnel. And then Traffic and Conversion Summit, which is based in San Diego. And that event will be on, I'll be speaking on September 15th, which is the final day there, specifically around on the B2B track on how companies should consider redefining their overall demand system. And so if you happen to be in one of the areas or you like the content so much and you can't get enough on the podcast and the live Zooms, feel free to join us in person. Anyone that's in either of those cities that wants to record content like a podcast or anything while I'm there, feel free to reach out as well. Cool. Moving into the agenda here. And I think that where I'm going to start is on the blurring line between sales and marketing. And so a lot of people are talking about this. To me, it's not blurry at all. I find this very distinct and clear between the differences, but a lot of people seem to struggle with the idea of this blurring line between sales and marketing. And so my feeling on this is, one, it is not about what your job title is or where you report into in the org chart. It's not about what channel you're using. It's about your mindset, about what you're trying to do, which then drives your behaviors and activities and goals. And so it's very possible that a marketer can be doing sales, or a salesperson could be doing marketing based on the mindset and the actual activities that they're doing. And I'm going to break this down ultra clear for people in the way that I see it. I think that a lot of people should consider adopting this definition because it's just super, super obvious and clean. When you're doing sales, you're trying to convert someone. And when you're doing marketing, you're trying to educate and build affinity and build a brand. It's very simple. So based on that definition, I would argue that most marketers actually execute sales. Performance marketing, in quotes for the listeners afterwards, performance marketing, I actually consider sales. You're basically trying to drive someone into sales. Direct response marketing with email, also, I consider falling into a sales category. And so regardless, I think that a lot of people fall into the camp that because these channels are marketing channels, right? Like it's Facebook ads or it's email. Those were traditionally marketing channels. So we'll just put this in a bucket of marketing. I think people should really reconsider the definition on that one. And so if you look at the definitions and the blurring line, like I just don't feel like a lot of people adopt this. And so when I'm executing as a marketer and you see this behavior on this event, on LinkedIn, in the podcast, and in all of my interactions, 100% marketing. And people are like, you can't get into the enterprise. You can't get into the enterprise without doing outbound sales and buying ABM software and cold calling a bunch of people. And last week we had 3 companies that were more than 50,000 employees that came inbound with an executive title to come and work with us with 0 outbound sales, no ABM tech, nothing, just good marketing. And so I want people to just think about these things. Like basically what we're doing at Refine Labs is challenging all of the assumptions that everyone has in SaaS tech that you need to do certain things in order to grow your business. and showing people that you really don't. You need to have a differentiated, well-defined product, a strong ICP, a content stream that actually educates people, that's distributed effectively in a way that people like, in a consistent way. Like, it's not that complicated. We have almost no tech to support anything that we're doing, and we're able to develop all of these different things. And so that's my general sense. Would love, I'm sure people maybe have some questions. We can dive a little bit deeper into this topic. Would love if anyone has something that's going on in their mind that we can help clarify for the listeners after. Would love if you would jump in and drop a question.
Yeah, while we wait for a few folks to drop some questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I can bring you on live. We were talking about this too yesterday a little bit. I think in addition to the marketing and sales, it's really thinking about how the future of sales and customer success might evolve as well. I have this prediction that sales and CS might actually merge into one role. If marketing does their job so effectively and the buyer is 90% of the way through the buying process, maybe it does make sense to have one person convert and continue that relationship ongoing. The initial conversion isn't even the most important thing anymore. The retention, the upsell, the expansion, it'll be interesting to see. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but maybe 10 years from now, we'll see.
We'll see. I think that there's some companies that are set up that believe in that can execute that. I believe that at Refine Labs, we are equipped to execute that type of strategy. However, I acknowledge that most companies aren't. And I acknowledge that most companies also are not focused on doing that. So maybe in 10 years, because buyers force that to happen, or just like the product-led movement and the ABM movement, everyone starts doing it, so every company follows. We'll see. But at the moment, I see very little motivation from executives to move on that, even though the concept makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I hear you there. Michelle has a question, maybe a little bit unrelated, but let's bring you on to
That's cool.
ask. Unmuting you now.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi. Always off topic. Sorry about that.
That's
Well,
cool.
actually, I put it in the chat. So it's kind of relevant though. So what advice would you give to a student that is majoring in marketing, but is learning the dinosaur system in comparison to what you're promoting? And is there an initiative in your business plan to recreate the narrative for higher ed marketing majors to offer something more relevant to the 2021 world?
The way that marketing, education, and frankly, a lot of different educational disciplines are packaged and distributed to people today through universities and MBAs, I think is mainly for the network, not the education, is just purely outdated material and is not relevant to what's happening in the world today. The education system simply can't catch up, can't keep up. And so, like, for me, I didn't study marketing, right? I worked at a company with some smart people, had some consultants that taught me a lot of great things about understanding customers. I went out, I built several e-commerce brands by myself, and figured out marketing and building a website and working with designers and how important creative is in conversion rates and all those different things. I think that most people today, if they had the discipline and the motivation and the drive to do it, would get more out of starting a small e-commerce business and losing money doing it than spending 160 grand on a marketing bachelor degree. And so I'm not here to change the higher education system, but I am here to just call out the way that I see it, which is that I just think there are better, faster, more effective paths to that level of education than what's being offered today at most colleges and universities.
Can I ask a third question?
100%.
So as someone promoting this newer way of marketing, and obviously much more successful, in your hiring process, does that degree matter? Or would you prefer someone that is completely clueless?
I've literally never looked at where someone goes to college as a means of whether or not we should consider hiring them. Don't even look at it. The experience is relevant enough, right? Like, if people looked at I have empathy for this. If people looked at my resume, like, this kid studied engineering, what does he know about marketing? but engineering is about systems and hypotheses and looking at data and making decisions and challenging assumptions and all of the core things of why I was able to build what I have today, what we're in the process of building right now. And so I don't think that a college degree is necessary. Was Procter and Gamble probably going to look at whether or not you have an MBA? Maybe. I don't know about their hiring process, but I don't think many I don't think the right executives don't care. The ones that do care, you might not want to work for them anyway.
Yeah. So it's more about upskilling, even taking what you already have and learning how to apply it to a new challenge or
yeah.
Right,
And the information is everywhere, right? Like it's all over the internet. I wasn't going to talk about this, but and it's sort of off topic, but parallel, mainly for the listeners. I was thinking about it right before this episode, is because I was looking at some tech vendor created some marketing education. So I was interested. So I went through and looked at the education and had been through a little bit of stuff. And I was like, nobody considers the amount of misinformation that they're getting, like how they look at it and they're like, okay, this is what, depending on who it's from, this is good information, but they never consider the debt that gets created when you take the wrong information and you ingest that and then do something with it. And so I've always been encouraging people to think about where are they getting the information from, and make a qualitative decision on whether or not that's where they should get it.
Very interesting. Thank you, Chris.
Great questions.
Thanks, Michelle. You always have great questions. All right, I got a couple more back to the topic of the blurring lines between sales and marketing. My friend and colleague, Sydney Waterfall, you're on live.
All right, quick question for what advice would you give, or what should you do as a marketer when you're being asked to do like maybe a sales activity that should be owned by the sales team? How would you handle that?
I think everyone's got to make their own decisions for themselves on things. Throughout my career, I've done a lot of things that are considered sales. It's not bad, right? Like it's not bad that marketers do some things that are sales. What's important is that you acknowledge what percentage of your time and activities and budget go to things that fall into the sales bucket versus the marketing bucket. And so I've done things that would be considered finance, sales, engineering, product, marketing, customer success. And I believe that the reason that I am able to run a company, and I believe is a pretty well-rounded business professional, is because I've done those things. And so you as a marketer should consider the things that you might learn from it by doing it, like going out on field rides with the field sales reps in 2016. I built for almost 90 days, built an incredible empathy for sales that I still use today, that I don't think that I would have as strongly if I didn't go through that process. And so I think it's about picking your spots and then evaluating. It's a really interesting chart for some people to consider building. Try and build the chart based on this definition of whether you're trying to convert people or whether you're trying to educate and build brand, and look at how your time's allocated as a marketer. A lot of marketers are 95% conversion. And the conversion part isn't bad, right? Like, we run Google ads, we do CRO. When people have intent, we're trying to convert them. However, a majority of the market doesn't. And so I allocate a big portion of my time to a majority of the market that doesn't. And when I create content that people love, it also impacts the people that have intent, that are in pipeline all the way through. So would be happy to answer a follow-up, Sydney, but that's what I'm thinking.
Good, thanks.
Thanks, Sydney. Nikki, nice to have you on the show. It's great to see you here tonight. I'm unmuting you. You're on live. Would love for you to ask your question.
Yeah, so who is more equipped to handle SDR strategy, marketing or sales in this new no MQL methodology?
So I don't have a clear stance on this because I think it's entirely dependent on the skill sets of the leaders and inside of the company, right? I don't know what the stat is, but I've talked to Kyle Lacey, CMO. He's in charge of the SDR team as well as the marketing team, and it's working. And I know plenty of companies that have SDRs under sales, and it's working well. So I don't think that it necessarily matters. Again, like going back to whether you're doing sales or marketing, like how the job rolls up into a job title or into a department doesn't necessarily matter. It's about the mindset and the activities and the behaviors that you do. So I think that if I was a marketing leader, I'll just talk through it, right? So if I was a marketing leader and the outbound SDR team reported into me, they would have very different activities and the team would most likely be significantly smaller. And so, because when you look at that in aggregate, right? So you put marketing, all marketing expenses, including headcount, variable working capital, et cetera, and the SDRs into one large bucket. And then you have to optimize that budget allocation for the outcomes that you want. I would be retooling that budget allocation pretty quickly once the results started going in, because it's just dramatically more efficient. And so it would be SDRs going after high value accounts, marketing handling a lot of the other stuff, and then tuning that budget. So I personally don't have a clear stance on this one. What do you think?
I actually like putting them with marketing because it makes for a little bit of better alignment on messaging. And if you aren't generating all of those high intent leads, it gives you the opportunity to really own the follow-up post low intent conversion, if that's what you've got.
100%. So I see that. And then the recommendation from there, you might already know where I'm going with this, is like figure out as quickly as possible not to be in that bucket anymore. And so obviously that takes some time to make happen.
Yep.
But bringing in high intent leads to relieve pressure on low efficiency outbound is something that I think is just a good business decision.
Yeah, I'm going to take your advice and split the funnel next.
Hell yeah. Love that.
Great to have you on the show, Nikki. Controversial question by Mike. I'm going to bring you on so you can drop your bomb.
Drum roll.
I swear I'm going to unmute you. You're on, Mike.
Okay. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Mike. Good to see you.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you. Yeah, my question is, and I'm asking this question because this is what I did. Why not just get rid of SDRs? Just put all your dollars into demand gen, driving inbounds, demo requests, contact us, etc.
It's a logical question. I think that companies that might have built it from the ground up, like us, don't have them. I think that companies that have already had that function established or decided when they incorporated their company in 2018 that they were going to do predictable revenue outbound, it's going to be hard for those companies to change. The huge factor in this that I don't talk about enough is the fact that in order to have a shot of doing that, you need to be really fucking good at marketing. And I just assess across, I see a lot of different companies, I see a lot of their marketing. I'm a marketer, like I would say actually zero MarTech vendors market to me well. And so like, it's a big leap from where a lot of companies are today to getting there. Could you get there? Probably. Are a lot of companies interested in it? Probably not. And so when you look at that, I believe that the ideal would be to have marketing generating the most and then have a small SDR team that's mainly focused on ABM target accounts. And it would be a different hiring profile than the current SDR hiring profile. So that's the way that I think about it. I'm trying to be practical in in a venture funded B2B SaaS setting, not like my business, because it's really different in terms of the how they think about growth. The growth is the growth trajectory of our company might be greater than a lot of companies at our revenue range, but how we think about it, how I think about it versus how that company thinks about it is very different. And I'm trying to be practical. And so the first step to getting this done is proving that you can drive all the revenue that you want through marketing at a significantly higher efficiency, way lower CAC, different things like that to build confidence to start to make these changes. Most companies haven't been through that, so they would never make the change. Any company that's moving into an ABM, quote unquote ABM model, which we'll talk about later, would never do this because it's basically just some marketing fluff around the edges to facilitate outbound sales with intent data. And so any company that buys into the ABM methodology would never make that move either.
All right, so I've had a small SDR team, both insourced and outsourced. And I think the challenge for me was we're in a very, very technical sale. And they never just really didn't have enough subject matter expertise to carry on a meaningful conversation. And also, effectively they were connecting with folks that were low intent. So we just never saw any success. We saw a lot more success out of demo requests and contact us. So I just cut it. And fortunately, was in a position where I was empowered to do that. Mm-hmm. And I hope we're really effing good at marketing, but we certainly trying to get better. So
sure you're doing great. And a note for people that are listening after, Mike mentioned that they're in a technical setting. I would argue that if you're selling to any type of executive, that you're in a technical setting, right? Like my ability to be an SDR and go and call a CISO, 0. I'm not shitting on SDRs. I'm shitting on the idea that the people that are making the calls do not have subject matter expertise to provide any level of value, insight, or anything to that buyer. I've been a marketing manager trying to go after emergency medicine physicians. 0 value. No one wants to have a meeting with me. They avoid you. And so I think people need to think about that as the quote unquote SDR role or whatever it forms into continues to evolve, because you're not going to get those types of conversations, whether you're a CSM, a marketer trying to do market research, an SDR trying to connect with an executive, a salesperson trying to get a follow-up meeting. If you are not providing value in the future, those meetings are going to go away because people value their time and there's just way too much going on. So I think companies should consider that.
Yeah, I'll make one more comment and then I'll drop. A while back, there was a similar SDR discussion, and you talked about the sort of the changing role of SDRs, and maybe hiring sort of a college grad, but someone who has, in my case, for example, some technical chops, could learn the basics of our messaging and understand our solution and start creating some content, and then maybe possibly reach out across LinkedIn versus sort of doing cold or slightly warm calling. I thought that was pretty interesting and something that I'm kind of rolling around in my head for if I get any extra hires for next year.
Yeah. So look, I'll give you an example, right? So there's a company out there that has a farm of 20 SDRs that are the profile that you just said. And what I consider myself to, like, a lot of the things that I do on LinkedIn to be considered business development. It's just in a way that people like, that's non-salesy, but that's what it is. And so instead of 20 SDRs that are doing that, I think the company should invest in 3 people that know what they're talking about for their buyer and have them just do what I do on LinkedIn, and they would get way better results. And so, yeah, because it goes back into the marketing versus sales conversation. Every executive and a lot of marketers, even me in my past time, right, lean towards sales. I've been a marketer probably 2016 or before that, it was all sales. Right. And so I have empathy for a lot of marketers that don't understand this distinction that now I do, which is a superpower that allows me to do marketing way better. And then moving into a marketing camp where you're posting content that's helping people, that doesn't have this transactional, I need to get something out of it right this second in order to deem it a successful activity in my CRM. And that's where I'm encouraging people to think about, like, it's not really a line. There's like a clear divide between those activities, and people just always lean toward the sales component because of just the way that B2B has worked historically.
All right, thanks.
Great convo, Mike. Glad to have you on here.
Thanks, Mike. All right, I think it's time to head back to the agenda, grab the
All
next
right.
one.
Cool. Where are we going to go from here?
Surprise me.
Yeah.
Or I can. pick.
So no, we're good. So I think this one will spark some questions, and I think it'll be relatively short, but I'm interested in the dialogue that happens afterwards, because I just interact with a ton of people. I post about it a lot of times. I hear a lot of people talking about ABM. I go on panel discussions with a bunch of people that are talking about ABM and demand gen and all this stuff with definitions that just are not correct, that are not consistent, and all these things like that. And so the topic is how ABM breaks down at execution. And that's my belief. I believe that if your ABM program is not working, it's because of the execution, not the strategy. And so companies get together, they start sipping on the ABM Kool-Aid because their CEO went to some conference where Terminus was presenting or something. So they're drinking the Kool-Aid. And then they're like, okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to buy the tech. They go through like 6 months of organizational planning and putting the tech together and all this different stuff. And they come out and they think that they're ready. And then they got their list. And then they got the list and they go out and not a lot's happening. And a lot of companies, I wish I had the stat off the top of my head, but I remember it being pretty high. Like one of the main struggles reported, and I believe it was Salesforce's report, is that the number one challenge that companies are facing right now with ABM is inability to track or prove ROI. And my belief on that stat, and I believe it 100%, that makes total sense to me. And my belief is that they're having trouble tracking it because it's not generating anything. Because what they're doing is they're just taking mainly display ads, running them to accounts just so that they can do cold calling. And I've done a couple of tests on this. One, I sat on a call with a CSM with a vendor just because I was interested, and I heard what the CSM was telling my customer to do with the ABM tool, and I was like, this has got to be the worst strategy I've ever heard. And so that was one piece of it. And then we actually took campaigns that we were running on a different channel, and we just wanted to see what would happen. So we took those, we reformatted them, we put them inside of this company's display campaign engine. We turned on the campaigns, and then the dashboards were off the chart. Within 6 hours of launching these campaigns, the dashboards were going crazy. Like all of these accounts were having intent and different things. And they were just pumping up metrics because you're running display ads through their platform and they're taking a cut of the money of the advertising spend off of it. And so it's just, it's concerning to me about where this is at. And it's just on the tactical level that I want to get into. And so I still believe that companies can select their list. I have confidence that, I mean, a lot of people say like 50% of the success of ABM is choosing your list. I've worked at companies that definitely couldn't choose the list, but I believe that most companies are capable of selecting a list with companies that are going to be good fits. The main thing that I see with that as an issue is they select accounts that are on their wish list and they're never going to win them, right? I could put together our ABM list, Salesforce, HubSpot, Gainsight, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to win any of those accounts this year. And so I'm afraid that some companies are literally doing that. But if you exclude that, which I would consider strategy, I believe that this really breaks down at execution. In terms of the execution, number one is that the marketers that are running the campaigns don't understand customers. You'll hear me say this all the time, but it's so true and it's so fundamental and it's so easy to solve. And so just understand customers. It's going to take, like, if you're a marketer and you're like, do I understand customers or do I not? Like, I believe that should be an ongoing process where you've probably interacted with customers for at least 90 days to have a shot of doing that. So understanding customers is then going to drive the content. right? So for whatever reason, like I consider from a marketing standpoint, content is the deployment, it is the driver, it is how you actually get stuff done. But the people that are creating the content don't understand customers. And honestly, like, I don't even see a lot of content. I don't get involved. I don't see a lot of the content coming through from ABM vendors. And so it doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't feel very content driven. And so that could be another gap, right? Because my belief is that it's so push, email, conversion, let's get meetings, let's just cold call people and that stuff, that the content either is an afterthought, the content is a way to put a catchy headline on there so that you can get someone to click onto your website, so you can claim some type of intent data so that you can cold call them, or you just don't do it. And so the lack of a clear content strategy, like I mentioned before, like these massive enterprise companies that have 50,000 or more employees didn't just come inbound to us for no reason. It's because we executed a content strategy that clearly resonated with them, which built brand, which created earned PR, which built credibility, which led them to come to us to solve their issue. And so the next thing that I would look at in terms of this, we have customer understanding, we have content. The next one is short-term mindset. So the easiest example of this, I've literally heard these before, where companies are considering for their 12-month sales cycle, that they're going to run an ABM pilot for 3 months. And it's like, so, and then if you did that, or even if you did it in 12 months, it doesn't matter because the marketing mindset is the same way. It's short term. If I just decided one day that I'm going to gain sites on our list, so I'm going to go after them, and with all my might, I decided I'm going to produce content for Gainsight, and I'm going to cold call them, and I'm going to DM Nick Mehta at the CEO, and I'm going to talk to all the other people. We're not going to win that deal because it's just purely it's not a great fit for where we are. They're not going to buy from us, and we're not providing any value along the way so that they understand what we're doing, so that they have an understanding of what we're trying to do. So customer understanding, content, short-term mindset. The next one is channels. I guess, yeah, we'll go channels for this one. So channels at this point, like any ABM strategy at the moment, unless you're not using tech, is basically getting driven through what MarTech vendors tell you to do. And I sat on, like I mentioned before, I sat on the calls. I see what's happening in the dashboards of the metrics. Like, I do not believe that that is a sound strategy to execute marketing on, but that's how it's being implemented. And so when you have that, you have the channels that you're going to get. You're going to get LinkedIn, just purely because there's enough company data to target there, but mainly you're going to get display ads. And everyone here, or at least I would say, at least most people here, know my position on display ads. I encourage everyone to think about when's the last time they actually saw one. It's weird to think about, but I said this in a couple of episodes ago, and I was thinking about trying to explain it better. At the moment, I don't even visit websites that are eligible to serve the banner ads. It's so interesting thing. I visit company websites. I'm using internal tech that requires a login, like Salesforce or HubSpot or things like that. I spend a ton of time on my mobile device on social networks. I use other apps on my phone that aren't invested in serving ads. And then occasionally I'm like looking up a word in the dictionary or something like that. So I go to search and I land on whatever, dictionary.com, and there's a couple banner ads. And so the amount of available spots where somebody could actually put that ad, my position is that B2B buyers are on those websites way less than they used to be, which therefore they don't even have the opportunity to see the ads as much. So channels becomes another one. Like, most people are just going to be pumping display and cold email. And then if they feel like it, they'll add LinkedIn to the mix. And I just think that you just need a better allocation and stream on channels. And then I'll close out with the last one of, I just believe that there's a over obsession with the tech. So whatever the capabilities of the tech are, the dashboards and metrics that are getting created on there. What other tools can we integrate? It's not working. What other tools can we integrate into this? We could put more tech on top of a strategy that's not working. Like those are some of the places where I see it break down. So to recap, we have, let's see if I can remember this. We have just deep customer understanding from marketers, lack of a content-driven approach. What else was there? I don't remember.
Over reliance on the tech.
Yeah, over reliance on tech, channels, and short-term mindset. Those weren't like laid out in steps 1 through 5. That's just me kind of riffing on that, but those are some of the misses that I see right now. Oh, and lastly, let's just close this out with one big one. If you think about how I defined sales and marketing at the beginning, is it really ABM? Is it really account-based marketing? Or is it marketers doing account-based marketing, helping sales do account-based sales? And that's what I want people to think about. And the reason that I want people to think about it is because it's a major, major unlock if you could figure it out. That when you have your marketers actually doing marketing in the way that it's defined that I mentioned at the beginning, when you actually have your marketers doing that, you drive way better results for the business. You drive way better leads and conversions for your sales team. You create a brand over the top so that your sales team outbound works better. You're creating intent so they have more intent signals in there with people that are brand aware so they can go outbound on it. But most marketers focus on helping sales. I've done this before. Talk about it all the time. Up to 2016, I was 100% just helping out the sales team. And when I figured out how to unlock this, it's like not even close in the impact to the business. I'm just trying to help people understand it because it took me a long time to get there. And now that I'm there, sometimes it's tough to sort of like rewind the time to in my head from like, whoa, that was what I was thinking back then. So maybe there's one person listening to this podcast that's like, I get it now. You can go and figure that out, but it's going to make a major difference in your career.
Is your ideal end state that you don't even really need to use the term or any of the useless ABM strategies? If you're like, essentially what you were just saying, it's like, if you execute marketing and sales well, like you're going to get the outcome that you want. You don't need to layer on these ABM strategies that ultimately don't really amount to anything. Like, is the ideal end state that this is just not even considered a thing anymore?
So because the definitions are so like fuzzy, I've struggled to like make a clear statement on this because I think a lot of people would define it a different way and be like, no. So I'm kind of on the record now. So I'm thinking about this, but it's impossible to argue with the strategy, right? Like define your accounts and go after them. Like any smart marketer was doing that before ABM tech came around, right? Like we were selling into hospitals. We knew what the top 50 pediatric hospitals in the US were. They were in our sales force as gold accounts. Sales was going at, there was probably 2 accounts in each salesperson's territory. They were going after them. We were trying to put on events or get meetings or other ways to engage with those accounts. We were having dinners at different conferences. So when those people were there, we would have dinners with them. We've done all of these things, right? The second piece of it is that the positioning of ABM and where it started was B2B marketing is broken. ABM is the solution. And B2B marketing was so broken before that almost anything else would have been a better solution than what was happening before, which is basically just generate a ton of leads regardless of fit or intent and hope that your sales team can call a couple of them because they have a pulse. And so when I look at this, I believe that there's a blend. I think that companies should look at not we're in the ABM camp. We do demand gen. We're doing this. We're doing growth marketing. We're doing revenue marketing. They all mean the same thing. It's just, what are you actually doing inside of them? And then try and pull and make your own recipe. That's what people need to do. They need to stop thinking about what is everyone else telling me to do, including me, and go out there and try things, align it against revenue and things that matter, figure out whether or not they're working. And if they're not working, make an assessment Is it because what I'm doing isn't working, because I don't understand customers, because the content's not good, because I'm not distributing effectively, because we're going after the wrong ICP, because nobody wants our product? Is it because what I'm doing isn't working, or is it because what the tactic is not working? And then when you do that 20 times, you can take the things that you don't feel are working, and you have the things that you've shown are working because you align to revenue, and then you put together your own mix, which might involve, like, I have no difference in definition between demand gen and ABM. Literally, to me, it's the exact same thing. Target accounts in a one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many model that are good fit customers, that are prioritized based on data, and go and do marketing to them. And so when I say that, though, I'm talking about my definition of marketing. And when most people say it, they think about the conversion-based focused of marketing, which I don't think is marketing.
I'm with you 100%. All right, I got a couple more questions on this topic. One, I'm going to ask on a listener's behalf. So this person shared with me that they've been in situations where founders attempt to scale sales too quickly without regard for creating demand. We've all been there. It sucks. Then sales execs or even sales VPs are hired, and sometimes for their networks. So they're hired to go outbound to like their personal connections, their networks, and effectively what you were just describing earlier are essentially, using marketing to assist in closing a sale, not for proper marketing. And, that said, in this particular case, there is some activities where marketing is optimizing, pipeline and doing some good work, but it's basically the sales team is using marketing as like their assistant. Causes a lot of misalignment, a lot of issues. Any advice for how to address a situation like this if you're in it?
You don't address a situation like this. I've been in this situation multiple times in my career as well. I'm sure many people have. At one point, it actually got a ton of traction because back in the day, I coined this situation as the marketing death wish. It's like the last place that you want to be as a marketer is inside of a company where the executives have decided that they're going to scale sales to 20 people without product market fit or any clear traction and no investment in marketing. And then once they get there, they're like, shit, we need marketing. So they go and hire 1, 2, 3 people. And then they just force marketing to basically try and pick up the slack for the super low productivity entire sales team by helping them do sales or just spinning around on the MQL lead gen hamster wheel instead of acknowledging that their strategy is wrong and taking a couple steps backwards because they can't. They can't take steps backwards because they've raised money and they need to have a growth path. And so the only option to go back on that would be to basically forfeit your funding or go through a super down round. And so companies won't do that. And so a lot of them will just try and push through it, and maybe they'll get to the next round, maybe they won't. But I've been in the situation before. I've gone through the struggles of trying to get an executive team on board with a different point of view. Even in my side, had generated $1 million or more in net new revenue in the past 12 months with that level of outcome for a company that was only doing $3 million in net new that year. A lot of their revenue was coming through expansion. So 33% of the revenue or something like that. And with that outcome, still couldn't get people on board. I just don't see it happening. And so, yeah.
So one more question on this topic.
Love it.
And we can close out ABM for the next one. If you guys have other questions related to this or anything else, drop them in the chat. I'll bring you on after. So this one, why do companies struggle to admit the tech-reliant ABM approach isn't working? Is it hubris?
So it's an interesting question. I think that there's a component of it where the things that they were doing before might have been so unproductive, because I've been inside of those Salesforce instances that literally, if you did almost anything differently, you would get a better result. So maybe it's just, maybe they're moving forward a little bit, but I think that the main reason that people don't want to look deeply at this specific topic is because they don't know what else to do instead. And so the only reason that I have a ton of confidence and conviction in the things that I'm saying is because I go into companies that are doing things like this, and then we change the strategy and their pipeline goes up by 50 or 100% over the next 6 months. I know that there's an impact. We do it over and over with companies. And so that's why I have confidence, but most people that are doing it don't. There are sales leaders that know that their outbound strategy is definitely not working, but they've been running that play for the past 15 years, and that's how they built their career. And now they're a CRO or a VP of sales, and they don't know what else to do instead, so they just keep running the play. Or they don't know what else to do instead, so they look to people that are going to tell them what to do. And most of the things that you get told what to do come from a couple of different sources. And those are MarTech, sales tech vendors, analyst firms that get paid by those companies, or anecdotal feedback from peers.
So just have to sneak in a quick follow-up from Bob. He wants to know how much you spent to create that $1 million in pipeline and revenue. Remember.
If we just look at the paid side, so we just like what I suggest to come to companies, organic and paid running together, lean on paid more at the beginning while organic builds. This was a full, like a content driven approach. I would imagine that we were spending somewhere between 15 and 30K a month if you combine Google and Facebook, and we weren't even doing LinkedIn for a majority of that time period. We started to scale up toward the end of my time there, pre-IPO, where we were spending $50,000, $75,000 a month, specifically around big campaigns related to clinical data. But a majority of that pipeline build came from probably 15K a month on Facebook ads, 8K a month on Google ads, a really, really strong video podcast with subject matter experts that had done clinical data. Those podcasts then were distributed via email. Great way to use email, by the way. A lot of email strategies don't work because email is a distribution strategy, a distribution mechanism for content. People treat it like purely a direct response channel. But when it's content focused, it was amazing. I knew that if I was going to hit send on a great podcast that we did on clinical data, and I was going to send it at whatever, 11 a.m. Eastern on a Tuesday or whatever, I don't know the times anymore, 11 a.m. Eastern on a Tuesday, that I knew that my buyer was going to be sitting at their desk that time. And they were going to click on the email, and they were going to go and consume significant amount of time on a 60-minute video podcast with an expert that was talking about the clinical study they did with our data. That's a good way to use email. So and then we were putting out a video podcast every month, or more than once a month, which was I was able to use that on almost a weekly cadence of email with a new stream of content, just like the content that we produce for LinkedIn. But at the time, LinkedIn organic wasn't the thing. So I was leaning a lot more on email, and that was in 2017-ish timeframe. And honestly, those were the main channels for us.
Cool. Nuam actually had a fun question that is related to this. I want to bring her on so she can break this down for you. Nuam, you are on Demand Gen Live.
Hello, everybody, again.
Hello. Great to have you here.
So yeah, I guess my question is a bit of a specific one, but we've got a target list. So my enterprise team have requested some help. They've been targeting a particular list of customers who are with one of our competitors. And I know that the SDR has been hitting this list already, and obviously it's not sort of working. we're looking at sort of a paid campaign, and this is the whole thing. I don't, I know you're shaking your head because
I'm
what
laughing
you
as
said,
I hear
honestly,
this.
what you
Yeah.
said like 5 minutes ago about sales leaders that kind of have gone up to that point because this is all they know. I feel like it's one of those situations, but anyhow, I'm looking at trying to help them, I suppose, with maybe a LinkedIn strategy that will put our brand in front of this particular list. And I thought to ask you, what do you reckon a good idea around this might be to sort of support their efforts?
So how many accounts are on the list?
I think there's about 150.
Cool. So how many SDRs are on your team, or how many SDRs are working this?
Just the one. We've just got the one.
Okay. So even if it's just
Yeah.
150 accounts, you can burn through those accounts in less than a week. So no wonder they're looking for some help, because they're going to go and make those calls, send the emails, get nothing back. You can only touch them so much, and then they're going to spin out, which is actually what companies do on ABM too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the thing that's flawed here is the targeting. Like targeting companies this is in most situations. I can't say all, but in most situations, targeting companies that use your competitor is the hardest ones to close. They already have a solution. They're probably pretty happy with it if they're not talking to you. It requires change, like a sales process, change management, integrations in tech. Like there's displacing an existing technology is difficult. And like there's plenty of instances where people do this to me, and it's like, I don't care if you have that one feature. It's literally just not worth it to me. You know what I mean? I'm happy with where I am. There's plenty of products that I just don't want to switch off of. And so if you think about, it'd be interesting to see for everyone to think about that in their own head about certain products, right? And so you're literally just throwing stuff out there and hoping that somebody bites. You know what I mean? It's like, basically, I get that the list is small, but it's pretty much just like send emails and hope. So my recommendation would be to change the target. But I'm happy to riff on it with you if you want to go down the road and you'd like some thoughts.
Yeah, I can. I guess with this particular list, I mean, I think you're right there. It is very hard to switch. I think the reason why they want to sort of go down this road is because they feel like we might have an edge with these customers. If we can identify these particular customers, we know that we're probably better technology-wise in terms of our capability and our service. And we've been hearing sort of through the grapevines, just customers kind of being a little bit unhappy with the service levels from this particular company. And they are actually a market leader to us in this particular space. Mm-hmm. And this is an enterprise space. So you do have multiple stakeholders and multiple buyers involved, mm-hmm. And potentially contracts as well that may not be ending necessarily anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So, and this is the thing about educating the team as well about, playing the long game, putting things in front of them, putting branding in front of them is going to be good for the long haul, but we may not get stuff straight away. But I think they're sort of happy with that as long as they're getting some kind of extra assistance, because obviously just calling them, as you said before, even with the SDR situation, unless they can hold a long enough conversation to add value, they just don't have enough time for us. So, So yeah.
So, like, if your technology is better, if you think that you should be winning them, those types of things,
yeah,
like you need to show them in a way that they listen to, right? Like you're trying to show them right now with the SDR in a way that they're not receptive to, and most people are not receptive to it either, right? And so what I would do, just like I've done over and over, is reverse engineer what's going on in those people's minds, not by guessing, by actually going to talk to a couple of them, seeing patterns and understanding what their point of view is. And so, and once you understand their point of view, you might find, hey, this list is shit. None of these people are happy. They're locked into 3-year contracts. What are we doing here? Right? I'd question. I don't think a lot of salespeople even do that activity. So I'm not sure whether or not you have that data right now. So that's one thing that I would do. And then you need to unwind what are the things that are important. And then you need to start showing people those things through media, organic content, other things like that. And this is another sort of like, just a like poke holes in ABM strategies that get run here. Like, how many accounts could you feasibly sell to? You got 150 on this list, but it's got to be like thousands or tens of thousands.
For us, actually, yeah, that's a good question because it depends on how many you can handle, right? Is that what you're talking about? Just
how many total companies out there in the world, if you were guessing, could be your customer?
Oh, right. Yeah, potentially, yes.
Yeah. So let's just say you got, what do you think, more than 10,000?
Well, we are Australia based at the moment, so yeah, let's just say about 5,000.
Okay, so let's call it 5,000. This is a perfect example for people that are running ABM. So instead of creating a one-to-many strategy that touches 5,000 accounts at once, which is the one superpower that marketing has over sales, instead of doing that, they pick a list of 150 companies that they're almost set up to lose on. And then marketing, instead of doing that, is trying to craft a campaign to 150 companies that you're at a significant disadvantage against. And so I'm not saying that every ABM strategy falls into that camp, but a lot of companies do this. They take a large total addressable market where they could go out and win a bunch of accounts, figure out marketing, build organizational capabilities, continue to grow revenue. And instead of doing that, they pick 50 accounts and then they just basically help their sales team try and do outbound sales. And so I'm trying to help people understand the benefits here. We do this at a bunch of companies. A bunch of companies are like, hey, we've been going at this for 6 months and we're not getting enough enterprise leads. And I go back to them and I'm like, over the past 6 months, we've actually gotten 150 enterprise companies to come in and ask for a demo. And so far we've won 0 deals. And at the same time, we've generated $1 million in ARR for all the companies that are less than 1,000 employees. And so if you'd like us to stop doing that and driving all of the revenues coming in for your company and focus all of the budget on enterprise, I'm happy to do it if you want, but it's not a good decision. And a lot of companies make that choice too. They don't actually market to companies that are 200 to 1,000 employees or whatever. The employee count is irrelevant. They pick a part of the market that they're just not going to go after, that they could definitely win easier with shorter sales cycles, better marketing, more scale, all these things. And they just focus on enterprise companies where the deals are longer sales cycles and definitely lower win rates and harder to break into. And I just think that there's a lot of opportunity to do some form of both. And now, I'm sorry, that was a rant, but it was sort of off topic to your question.
No, I always like your answers. No, that's good. Thank you.
Cool.
Have you on, Nuam. Hope all is
Good
well.
to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
Got a fun question from Jess that I'll ask for her, that I think it's kind of a riff off what we were talking about earlier in not being able to change a CEO or an executive team that thinks a certain way. So how can you determine or figure out if a CEO just like really doesn't get it, or if maybe they're just uneducated about a better way? Like, is there a difference between someone who has like a fixed mindset that won't change versus someone that maybe really just doesn't know? And if they were educated, they were informed, they would buy in. Any tips for like distinguishing if you're meeting a new CEO, maybe in an interview process?
The first place where my brain went to is I struggle to think about a CEO that has an open mindset that doesn't already believe in marketing, where it's not obvious. right? Because all the signals are there, the way that buyers are responding, the way that they interact with marketing and purchase their own products. There's a ton of data that's so obvious that marketing is a critical, important part, and you should learn and understand it. And so I just think that if they don't recognize it right now, then something is wrong. It'd be like me sitting here doing Demand Gen Live and there's a fire behind me on the floor. And I'm just like continuing on Demand Gen Live, oblivious to the fire. Like, it's so obvious that marketing is important. So if someone doesn't get it by now, then I think that that's a signal that something else is going on, because it's just so obvious.
I'll add, I think a couple things is like, you can understand better about how they think about like goal setting priorities, challenge, like historically how closed run revenue, like I think there are a lot of questions you can ask that can kind of uncover it. Just to jump into the practical side of things.
Yeah, sometimes I'm so practical, but that's okay.
I don't disagree, Chris, of course. So, I'm going to tee you up because I think we need to get to, we actually had a couple questions that were submitted in advance that were directly about this last agenda topic of what happens when marketing aligns to revenue instead of leads or SQLs. And some of the questions were like, what exactly do you mean by this? And so I think it's time to tackle agenda item number 3.
Let's do it. Appreciate the tee up. And so I'm just going to cut right to the chase here, because when you make this change, because there's a lot of people talking about doing it, there's a bunch of people reporting on pipeline or revenue or whatever. And there's what should happen when you do that. And then there's what's actually happening. And so I'll walk through both of them. When you align to revenue, what should happen is that you immediately scrutinize everything that you're doing at a lens of revenue, not leads, which would inform you to cut out a lot of the things that you're doing right now, which would then inform new activities. And we'll get into that in more detail. What's actually happening, however, is that companies just start reporting on pipeline and revenue and keep doing all the same stuff. Don't change their activities. Don't look at it whether it's driving results. Just change how they're reporting. And that's the key issue, because it's giving the reason to change your metrics. The reason that I like being scored as close to revenue as possible. Most companies will score us on sales qualified opportunities or qualified pipeline. And I also I like looking at revenue because it gives me way more space to do marketing. Way more than a lead target. And so the reason to change the metrics is to allow your marketers to do other things. It's really, really that simple. But what's happening in practice is they're changing the reporting and marketers aren't doing anything new. So while they're reporting on pipeline, which in most companies, when they're reporting on pipeline, they're reporting on someone that's set a meeting, like an SDR set a meeting. They haven't even sat on that yet, and they report it as pipeline. But all they're doing is running the same MQL hamster wheel that they were before. And just instead of reporting on 10,000 leads, now they're reporting on the amount of pipeline that came from those 10,000 shitty leads. And so it's about aligning to revenue. It's about optimizing your activities for revenue, not just about the reporting. And on that note, because a lot of people ask me about it, so we'll kind of go on a tangent rant here. Is a lot of people ask me about this, like, why does your company align to pipeline and revenue? I just gave you the B2B marketers answer, because all the other agencies or whatever that I'm looking at are just telling us that they're going to pump up our leads, or some, a couple of the ones are talking about SQLs. And the reason that all of those companies do that is because it's the only metric that they can move. If you were a company, if you were going to hire an agency, if you were an agency, let's just put it this way, if you were an agency and you could move revenue, don't you think you would talk about it? Not a lot of people do, because they don't spend time in the CRM, because they optimize for metrics. And so in order for that company, in order for other agencies to do something different, it's not just like these companies. It's not only about changing the metric, because once you change the metric, you have to change everything about what you do, and that would break their business. And so I'd be happy to answer some follow-ups, but it's about the lens. I guess maybe I'll talk through how I started to figure this out. When you align to revenue, and the only reason that I aligned to revenue is because I worked for a CEO that only thought about things in sales. So I was like, if I want to get my budget to move from $5,000 a month to $50,000 a month, which I did successfully in less than 12 months, if I want that to happen, then I'm going to need to demonstrate pipeline and revenue outcomes within that period of time. And so I started looking really hard. I started doing a ton of stuff. And so I had people that were coming through the website, asking for a demo, moving to SQL super fast, becoming close one customer super fast. The next thing that I wanted to do is figure out how to get more. And so at this point, I didn't know the difference. So I just started running performance marketing on Facebook and LinkedIn. Let's go out. I know the job titles. I have a bunch of ebooks that the company had before. I can just run straight get a demo ads if I want. I can do these things. I collected a ton of leads. I called a couple of them and saw how low quality they were in terms of their level of intent. Right job title, right company, super low intent. Didn't want to talk to me if I even got a hold of them. And so I decided not to pass those to sales, and saw that none of them were going forward. SDR started to take those calls at some point. None of them move forward. And that's what aligning to revenue is. That's what it does. I stopped doing that activity within 20, 30 leads, because the leads were low quality. They weren't converting to pipeline, which means they definitely won't be converting to revenue. So why are we doing this activity? And so and then you do that 20 times over with a bunch of different tactics, and you come up with a mix that's aligned to driving high intent leads that actually convert to revenue, and you work through it.
I was going to encourage you to break down some of the other metrics that do make sense to look at on your way to revenue, right? Because even when you are aligned to revenue and you can identify activities that aren't converting there, and you can drop those. Some companies have really long sales cycle, right? And it does take time to actually realize that revenue. Sales qualified pipeline is a big one that I know we talk about a lot, but like, what are some of the metrics that you think are the right things to look at so that you're getting those signals that what you're doing is working until you are able to make the clear connection to revenue?
The easiest signal that you'll ever get is to go and talk to the people that are getting your leads, which in my situation was AEs, and go and talk to them about the conversations that they're having with people. And you got all the data that you need. You go and get their qualitative assessment in the conversation, you map it back to lead source. You're going to find that certain groups of lead sources drive junk. Others have a high percentage. So you can look at combined conversion rates to qualified pipeline, but also the qualitative assessment from sales will give you a more immediate feedback layer. So those two things in pipeline are really good to look at. Just overall quality of the conversions. This one's tricky because a lot of it is just purely based on the firmographic data of people submitting the forms, and has not a huge signal on the level of intent except for what they asked to do. But I acknowledge that, and I mentioned this in another episode, a person submitting a demo on your website that came through direct traffic, and a person that's asked for a demo that came through a paid LinkedIn ad direct response, way different levels of intent, way different conversion rates. I wouldn't even consider it the same type of conversion or the same level of intent. Other things that I would consider are, what are people saying about the content? And so when I used to have that email strategy where I would send out those videos, I got some really good feedback because people would literally reply to the marketing email that I sent them out from and say, hey, I'd love to get a demo of this, or hey, this was super interesting. There is feedback from marketers everywhere. They're just not looking for it. They're looking in their dashboards. There's places to listen to the market all the time, but the place where I see marketers spend their time looking at dashboards, listening to what the sales team says, listening to gong calls, using social listening tools. You don't need any of that stuff. You can go and talk to customers and listen everywhere. So those are some, I mean, I'm sure there's a longer answer with a lot more detail, but those are some of the things like earlier stage that I would look at.
Yeah, definitely. And given this mindset shift of aligning to revenue, I think that it's important to look at it through the lens of how can you drive some short to medium term results while you also continue to do things that will drive longer term results, right? Like,
I'm super confused why people think this way. Like, a lot of people that are listening to our podcast think that it takes longer to drive results in our strategy than the MQL model that they're on right now. It's not true. What the time lag that you don't get is not about revenue. It's about how fast you get your leads and your dashboards light up. And so that's the gap here. Operating on this strategy drives revenue faster, but you're not going to drive as many leads, and they're not going to come in through so fast because you're not just pumping up dashboards. And so the confusion here is the misalignment on the metric. When companies think they want the things are happening fast, it's because they're looking at metrics that don't matter. They're looking at leads. They're looking at what job title they had and what company they came from, not whether or not they converted to pipeline, whether or not they converted to revenue, versus looking at it against revenue. And it's super simple. You can go and run both of these strategies in parallel, or you could literally do this right now if you wanted to. If you had a sales cycle, you could look at you running your lead gen model, and you got some people that are coming to your website, pull out all of the people that submitted those two different things over a 2 or 4 week period of time, make that into a cohort, and then track them to revenue and tell me what you get. You're going to get revenue faster on this model.
Yeah, I agree. And I think where I was kind of going with it is I think there's an opportunity to deploy a lot of the paid strategies that we do with our customers today, while also creating space to start to do some of the longer term plays around starting a podcast and the organic brand building stuff. So I think it's understanding that they both play a role, and there's a way to drive better results still with high intent buyers, not through performance marketing, while you're also setting the foundation for some of these other things so that you can start to command that attention without paying for it, and like explaining the difference so that you can create space to hopefully start executing both at the same time in order to move things quickly and also lay the foundation for more exponential growth later on.
100%. I think that like using paid in the short term to accelerate the process of content distribution and learning and things like that while you build organic is such an obvious strategy. I think that it breaks down for a lot of companies because of the organizational constraints that get created, whether it's on the metric side, whether it's on the mindset side, that it doesn't matter what's happening. The organic long form content is not accepted inside of those companies. Attribution would be another huge one. And so I do believe that's the right path. I just don't see a lot of companies taking it.
Yeah, I agree. But I think explaining the importance of both in the context of aligning to revenue, I think, and how you can get those quick wins while also leveraging that stuff for brand. I think that's the ideal, but it's definitely a challenge without the right mindset at a leadership level. Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say that I thought you were going to answer with the leading metrics was we've talked a lot about splitting the funnel, and as we typically see with a lot of our customers, buyers coming through like the request a demo form, the contact sales form, the ones that come and raise their hand and say, hey, I want to talk to someone. I'm probably interested in buying your product. We look at a lot of those for our customers too, right? Like an increase in a very specific channel that we're driving to because of all the education and awareness building that we're doing. And then also I would say like an increase in inbound organic traffic to the website, right? Like if you're building more awareness, more people are coming. So I think these are just some of those additional leading indicators that just help tell the story as you're building into actually, you know, closing deals from what you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of hit on that, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper because those metrics are only going to point you in the right direction if the system is stable and you're doing the right activities, right? I can go into YouTube ads any day, turn on audience expansion, spend $300 a day and have spam, organic, direct attributed conversions come through my demo form and pump up numbers that don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like when you use GDN and when you use YouTube specifically, those two channels, that's the outcome that you get. So it doesn't get directly attributed to the channel. There's no direct response on this. Doesn't get directly attributed to the channel. So you're looking at it as organic. And it comes through an organic way. And if you look at the submissions, it is complete trash. Complete trash. Janitor, made up job title, Gmail, no name company, nothing. And companies are spending tons of money on those channels and getting that result in their demo form, and they have no idea. One of the companies that I work for turned that stuff on a couple weeks ago. And I get the demo email notifications, and I've been watching those same demo notifications for the past 6 months while I was doing it. Shit was clean. Good titles, high intent, right channels, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you get 20, 30 garbage submissions in 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, I know what's going on. Somebody must have changed something in YouTube or Google, because that's the only thing that happens here. And so that's a long-winded way of saying that if you don't know what you're doing, there are other ways to game those metrics. So I just help people understand that the leading metrics are important, but it's way more important to understand the whole system, because those metrics can get created in other ways. Another note for people, when you think about that whole thing, like, do you think that stuff's made up? You think that Google's doing that for that specific, you think they're doing it for no reason that way? There's no attribution on the channel, but you see conversions inside of Google. So you can't tell which conversions came from Google. So you don't know whether or not they're good or bad, but you're seeing them in the platform, which helps you spend more money. And so companies are running this, and maybe they're getting 500 or 1,000 demos, or maybe they don't even look at the amount of leads. And then there's just a ton of spam coming through here, which helps you spend more money, and people don't even know what's going on. It's just super clear. So any people that are spending specifically on YouTube or GDN, and you don't know why there's a ton of spam coming through your demo form, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't understand it. I've just seen it a bunch of times. So if you're running either of those channels and you see that type of quality coming through your demo form, shut that stuff off for 5 days and see what happens.
Felt like tonight was all about like simplifying things, right? Like ABM is just marketing. Let sales sell, let marketing do their thing, and let's make some revenue, right? Why don't you take us home with some closing thoughts?
It was a great recap. I'm not sure I can top that one. Cool, everyone. Yeah, so we're trying to keep the agenda flowing. People send me DMs and things like that, which help inspire some of these questions. And so if you got things that you're working on or things like that, feel free to shoot me in a DM. It's pretty flooded in there, but I try and get to everything that I can. And so we'll take those insights, and then we can actually, like, you know how I talk, right? We're not going to be specific about your situation, but we can talk about it in generalities and help a lot of people out with the things that you're working on. Additionally, I believe that I don't think we've officially confirmed it, but I expect the core topic with Tom Wentworth will be on attribution. Specifically, I think, to use his words, attribution is ruining go-to-market. I've been saying attribution is ruining marketing. And so it'll be interesting to see different point of views on those topics. And so if you're interested specifically, or if you're maybe struggling with the challenge of attribution, which, by the way, every company is, I talked to a lot of them. not one company. It's like, we got attribution figured out. So if you're struggling with some of those things, I think there'll be some really great insights. Tom is a CMO at a cybersecurity company, has a really strong point of view. I think it'd be valuable for people. And yeah, just love seeing you all here. Appreciate the questions. Some of the best content comes out of the conversations like the one I had with Mike and Nuam. So really appreciate all of your participation and look forward to seeing you next week.
Have a great week, everyone. See you next Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.